Alien girl laughed at human breeding. Until she experienced it herself. The sky above Earth shimmered with streaks of silver as a sleek, crystalline ship descended through the clouds. It was unlike anything the humans below had ever seen, sharp edges glinting like ice, glowing faintly with an eerie blue light. Inside, Vera, the Queen of Zorith, stood tall and motionless, her golden eyes scanning the green and blue planet below. Her skin shimmered like polished glass, reflecting the light of her ship's control panels. She was slender, elegant, and towering, her presence commanding even in silence. Her people, the Zorathians, were known across the galaxy for their advanced technology and cold, logical minds. To them, emotions were a flaw, and humans were little more than a curiosity, a species rumored to possess a mythical quality called spirit. Vera didn't believe it. To her, humans were chaotic, fragile, and unworthy of the tales whispered among the stars. The ship landed in a remote forest, far from human cities, where the air smelled of pine and damp earth. Vera stepped out, her long robes trailing behind her like liquid metal. She inhaled deeply, the unfamiliar sense prickling her senses. Her mission was simple: observe the humans, gather data, and return to Zorith with proof that their so-called resilience was a fable. Her people had no use for myths, they thrived on facts, precision, and order. Yet, as she gazed at the towering trees swaying in the breeze, she felt a flicker of something strange, curiosity, perhaps. She dismissed it quickly. Feelings were a distraction. A rustling sound broke her thoughts. From the shadows emerged a human, Kale, a rugged engineer with a mop of sandy hair and sharp green eyes. He wore a worn leather jacket and carried a toolkit slung over his shoulder. His steps were confident, but his expression was guarded as he studied the alien queen. He'd been assigned by Earth's council to assist her, though he wasn't thrilled about it. Aliens didn't usually land in his backyard, and he liked his quiet life fixing machines, not babysitting visitors from the stars. "You must be Vera," Kale said, his voice steady but tinged with suspicion. He stopped a few feet away, sizing her up. She was taller than he'd expected, her presence almost overwhelming. "I'm Kale. They sent me to help you. What's the plan?" Vera tilted her head, her golden eyes narrowing as she assessed him. His tone was direct, lacking the deference she was used to from her subjects. "I am here to study your kind," she replied, her voice smooth and melodic, like wind chimes. "Your people claim to possess a strength beyond logic, a spirit. I intend to disprove it." Kale raised an eyebrow, a smirk tugging at his lips. "Disprove it? Good luck with that. Humans don't exactly fit into neat little boxes." He gestured to the forest around them. "This place isn't Zorith. Things get messy here." She didn't respond, her gaze drifting to his toolkit. Primitive tools, she thought, metal and wires, nothing like the seamless tech of her world. She turned back to her ship, tapping a panel on its hull. A holographic display flickered to life, showing maps and data streams. "I require solitude for my work," she said. "You may leave." Kale crossed his arms. "Not how it works. I'm your guide. You're stuck with me." His tone was firm, but there was a glint of amusement in his eyes. Vera felt a flicker of irritation, another emotion she pushed aside. She didn't need a human trailing her, but arguing seemed pointless. She nodded curtly and began her scans, ignoring him as he leaned against a tree, watching her with quiet interest. Hours passed in silence, the forest alive with chirping birds and rustling leaves. Vera's instruments hummed, collecting data on the air, the soil, the life around her. Kale stayed nearby, occasionally tinkering with a small gadget from his kit. She found his presence distracting, though she couldn't say why. His calm confidence unsettled her, as if he knew something she didn't. Then the sky darkened. Clouds rolled in fast, heavy with the promise of rain. A crack of thunder split the air, and Vera's ship let out a sharp beep. She frowned, checking the hologram. A power surge, impossible. Zorathian tech didn't fail. But before she could react, a bolt of lightning struck the ship's hull, sending sparks flying. The hologram flickered out, and the ship's glow dimmed. Vera's heart raced, an unfamiliar sensation, as she tapped the controls frantically. Nothing responded. Kale was at her side in an instant, his voice cutting through the rising wind. "What's wrong with it?" "It's malfunctioning," she said, her voice tight. "This shouldn't happen." "Yeah, well, Earth doesn't care about shouldn't," Kale shot back. He pulled a flashlight from his kit and shone it on the ship's hull, revealing a blackened scar where the lightning hit. "Looks like your fancy tech took a hit. We need to get it under cover before the storm gets worse." Vera stared at him, her mind spinning. Cover? Her ship was built to withstand cosmic radiation, not primitive weather. But the rain was already falling, hard and relentless, soaking her robes. She nodded reluctantly, and Kale gestured toward a rocky overhang nearby. Together, they dragged a tarp from his kit over the ship's exposed panels, the wind whipping at their clothes. The storm raged on, thunder shaking the ground. Vera's fingers trembled as she tried to restart the ship, but it was useless. She felt exposed, vulnerable, feelings her kind avoided at all costs. Kale crouched beside her, rain dripping from his hair. "We can't fix it in this," he shouted over the storm. "But I've got an idea." Before she could protest, he darted into the trees, returning with branches and vines. With quick, practiced movements, he rigged a makeshift shelter over the ship, securing it with knots she didn't understand. It wasn't elegant, but it held, shielding the hull from the worst of the rain. Vera watched, stunned. He'd done it with nothing but his hands and what the forest offered. The storm eased as suddenly as it began, leaving the air cool and quiet. Kale wiped his hands on his jacket, grinning. "Not bad, huh?" Vera didn't answer at first. She studied the shelter, then him. "Why did you do that?" she asked finally. "You had no tools, no plan." Kale shrugged. "Didn't need a plan. Just saw a problem and fixed it. That's what humans do." She frowned, processing his words. On Zorath, every action was calculated, every solution engineered. This, improvisation was illogical, yet it worked. For the first time, she wondered if there was more to humans than she'd assumed. "Your kind is strange," she said at last. "Strange's one word for it," Kale replied with a laugh. "Come on, let's figure out what's wrong with your ship. We're in this together now." Vera hesitated, then nodded. The forest stretched out around them, vast and wild, and she felt a spark of something new, curiosity, yes, but also a faint pull toward this human who defied her expectations. As they began inspecting the damage, she couldn't shake the feeling that her mission was about to change in ways she couldn't predict. The forest was still damp from the storm, the ground soft underfoot as Vera and Kale worked side by side. The alien queen knelt beside her ship, her long fingers tracing the scorched hull where the lightning had struck. Her golden eyes flickered with frustration. Zorathian technology was supposed to be flawless, a pinnacle of perfection. Yet here it was, silent and dark, its crystalline surface marred by Earth's unpredictable nature. She felt a pang of something unfamiliar, a mix of irritation and helplessness, but she buried it deep. Emotions wouldn't fix this. Kale, meanwhile, was a whirlwind of motion. He rummaged through his toolkit, pulling out wires, a small wrench, and a handheld scanner he'd cobbled together years ago. His sandy hair stuck to his forehead, damp from the rain, but his green eyes shone with focus. He didn't seem bothered by the ship's failure, in fact, he looked almost excited. "Okay," he said, crouching beside her. "Let's see what we're dealing with. Can you open this panel?" Vera hesitated, her pride bristling at taking orders from a human. But she nodded, pressing a hidden seam on the hull. A section slid open, revealing a maze of glowing circuits, some flickering weakly, others completely dead. Kale whistled low. That's some fancy tech. Lightning must have fried the power core. We'll need to reroute it. She stared at him, incredulous. Reroute it? This is not a simple machine. It requires precision, tools your kind cannot possibly possess. Kale grinned, unfazed. Maybe not your tools, but I've got enough to work with. Watch and learn, Queen. He dove in, his hands moving with a confidence that baffled her. He stripped wires with a small knife, twisted them together, and hooked them to his scanner. Vera watched, torn between skepticism and fascination. His methods were crude, chaotic, nothing like the sterile efficiency of Zorath, but they were effective. Slowly, a faint hum returned to the ship. Days passed in the forest as they worked. The sun rose and set, painting the trees in gold and shadow. Vera observed Kale closely, noting how he never stopped, even when exhaustion crept into his movements. He'd mutter to himself, sketching ideas in the dirt with a stick, then try something new when one plan failed. She'd always thought humans weak, their short lives a sign of inferiority. But Kale's persistence was something else, stubborn, relentless, almost alive in its own way. One afternoon, as they sat eating a simple meal of bread and dried fruit Kale had brought, she broke the silence. "Why do you keep going?" she asked, her voice softer than she intended. "You have no guarantee of success." Kale paused, chewing thoughtfully. "Because giving up's not an option. If I stop, we're stuck here. Simple as that." He met her gaze, his eyes steady. "Humans don't quit just because it's hard. We figure it out." Vera frowned, processing his words. On Zorath, failure meant reassessment, a logical retreat to plan anew. This blind determination was foreign, reckless, yet it stirred something in her. "Your kind is illogical," she said at last. "But I cannot deny your effort." He chuckled. "I'll take that as a compliment." Their uneasy truce was interrupted that night. The forest grew eerily quiet, the usual chirps and rustles fading into stillness. Kale tensed, his hand resting on a metal rod he'd been using as a tool. Vera's sharp senses picked up a faint vibration in the air, a ship, cloaked, approaching fast. Before she could warn him, shadows burst from the trees, 3 Zorathian warriors, their armor gleaming, their eyes cold and predatory. They were renegades, outcasts from her world, driven by greed and chaos. "Vera," their leader hissed, his voice dripping with malice. "You've strayed too far from home. Your ship, and your life, belong to us now." Kale sprang to his feet, rod in hand, placing himself between Vera and the attackers. "Back off," he growled, his stance unwavering despite the odds. Vera's heart thudded, an emotion she couldn't name surging through her. Fear. Anger. She stood, her voice steady. "You dare challenge your queen? Leave, or face the consequences." The leader laughed, drawing a sleek energy blade. "You're no queen out here." He lunged, and chaos erupted. Vera moved with trained grace, dodging the blade, but the renegades were fast, their movements synchronized. Kale swung his rod, catching one in the chest, sending him sprawling. The second grabbed Kale's arm, twisting it back, but he didn't falter. With a grunt, he kicked the alien's knee, breaking free. Vera blasted a pulse of light from a device on her wrist, stunning the leader momentarily. But they were outnumbered, and the renegades pressed their advantage. "We can't win like this," Vera shouted, her mind racing. Retreat was logical, but Kale shook his head. "We don't run," he said, breathless. "We fight smart." He darted to his toolkit, grabbing a spool of wire and a battery pack. In seconds, he'd rigged a trap, wires stretched across the clearing, charged with a jolt from the battery. "Get them over here." Vera didn't hesitate. She feinted a retreat, luring the renegades toward the trap. The leader charged, snarling, and tripped the wires. A crackle of electricity lit the night, and he collapsed, twitching. The others faltered, giving Kale and Vera an opening. She blasted one with her wrist device while Kale tackled the last, pinning him with sheer force until he stopped struggling. The forest fell silent again, the renegades defeated, bound with their own belts. Vera's chest heaved, her golden eyes wide as she stared at Kale. He wiped blood from a cut on his lip, grinning despite it. "Told you we'd figure it out." She didn't respond at first, her mind reeling. The trap was crude, thrown together with scraps, yet it worked. She'd fought with precision, but Kale's wild ingenuity turned the tide. For the first time, she felt something beyond curiosity, admiration, sharp and undeniable. "You risked yourself," she said finally. "For me." Kale shrugged, catching his breath. "Couldn't let them take you. We're a team now, right?" A team. The word echoed in her mind, foreign yet warm. On Zorath, alliances were strategic, devoid of loyalty. But Kale's actions weren't calculated, they were instinctive, driven by something deeper. She looked at him, his rugged face smeared with dirt, and felt a spark ignite within her, a flicker of connection she couldn't explain. Over the next few days, they resumed work on the ship, their rhythm smoother now. Vera began asking questions, not just about the repairs, but about Kale, his life, his world. He told her stories of human struggles, wars fought with sticks when guns ran dry, cities rebuilt from ashes. She listened, captivated, her cold logic bending under the weight of his words. Each tale painted a picture of chaos, yes, but also of a strength that defied reason. One evening, as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows through the trees, Vera sat beside him, her robes brushing the ground. "Your spirit," she said quietly. "It's not a myth, is it?" Kale glanced at her, surprised by the softness in her voice. "Guess that's up to you to decide. I just know we don't give up, even when it's crazy to keep going." She nodded, her gaze distant. The spark within her grew, a warmth spreading through her chest. It wasn't just admiration now, it was something alive, pulling her toward him. She didn't understand it, not fully, but for the first time, she didn't want to push it away. The renegade's attack had shaken her, but Kale's resolve steadied her. Together, they were stronger than she'd ever been alone. As night fell, they sat by a small fire Kale had built, the ship's hum growing steadier with each repair. Vera stared into the flames, feeling the heat on her glass-like skin. She'd come to Earth to disprove a legend, but now, she wondered if she was starting to believe it, if that spark within her was the very thing her people feared. And as Kale's quiet laughter filled the air, she knew their journey was far from over. The forest had become a strange kind of home for Vera and Kale over the past weeks. The air carried the scent of pine and earth, and the soft rustle of leaves had grown familiar, almost comforting. Vera stood beside her ship, her golden eyes fixed on the glowing circuits they'd painstakingly repaired. The hum was stronger now, a steady pulse that promised flight, if only they could finish. Kale knelt nearby, his hands smeared with grease as he tightened a connection with his wrench. His sandy hair fell into his eyes, but he didn't pause, his focus unbreakable. Vera watched him, her mind a storm of thoughts she couldn't quiet. Since the renegade attack, something had shifted between them. The spark she'd felt, that flicker of admiration, had grown into a steady glow, warm and persistent. It unsettled her. On Zorath, feelings were weaknesses to be controlled, locked away behind logic. Yet here, with Kale, they surged freely, defying her every attempt to suppress them. She'd come to Earth to study humans, to disprove their mythical spirit, but now she wondered if it was changing her instead. Kale glanced up, catching her stare. "What's on your mind, Queen?" he asked, wiping his hands on his jacket. His tone was light, but his green eyes held a knowing glint. Vera hesitated, her glass-like skin catching the sunlight. "Your ways," she said at last. "They confuse me. You fight without certainty, build without plans, feel without restraint. How do you live like this?" He grinned, leaning back on his heels. Guess we don't think about it too hard. Life throws stuff at us, storms, enemies, broken ships, and we just keep going. Call it stubbornness, maybe. He paused, his gaze softening. What about you? Everything on Zorath so perfect you don't ever trip up. She looked away, her fingers brushing the ship's hull. Perfection is our strength. We plan, we calculate, we succeed. Failure is unacceptable. Her voice faltered, the memory of the ship's malfunction flashing through her mind. Until now. Kale stood, stepping closer. Failure's not the end, Vera. It's just a detour. Humans mess up all the time, doesn't mean we're done. He gestured to the ship. Look at this. We're fixing it, bit by bit. That's what matters. His words lingered in the air, simple yet heavy. Vera felt that glow within her flare brighter, a warmth she couldn't name. She wanted to argue, to cling to Zoratha's cold logic, but Kale's certainty, his quiet, unshakable belief, chipped away at her defenses. Before she could respond, a sharp beep cut through the silence. The ship's console flared to life, displaying a warning in Zorathian script. Her eyes widened as she translated it silently, sabotage detected. Core destabilized. Kale, she said, her voice tight. Someone tampered with the ship, before I even landed. This wasn't the storm. He frowned, peering at the console. Sabotage? Who'd do that? My people, she whispered, the realization sinking in like a stone. Not all, but some. There are factions on Zorath who fear humans, your unpredictability, your spirit. They must have wanted me to fail here, to prove you're a threat. Kale's jaw tightened. So they broke your ship to strand you. That's low, even for aliens. He rubbed his chin, thinking. Can we fix it? Vera nodded slowly. Yes, but it will take time. And if they suspect I've survived, they'll come for me. Then we'd better be ready, Kale said, his voice firm. Tell me about this spirit thing they're scared of. Maybe it's our edge. She hesitated, then sat beside him on a fallen log. The words came slowly at first, haltingly, as she tried to explain what she'd dismissed for so long. Your legends say humans have a fire inside, a will that burns even when hope is gone. My kind call it myth, a flaw that makes you reckless. But I've seen it in you, Kale. You don't stop, even when logic says you should. Kale listened, his expression thoughtful. Sounds about right. We've got a saying here, where there's a will, there's a way. It's not just talk, it's how we survive. He leaned forward, his voice dropping. Ever hear about the time we rebuilt a city after a flood? No tech, no ships, just hands and grit. Took years, but we did it. Vera's eyes widened as he spoke, painting a picture of humans clawing their way back from ruin. He told her more, stories of explorers crossing oceans in wooden boats, soldiers holding lines against impossible odds, families starting over with nothing but hope. Each tale was raw, messy, and alive, a stark contrast to Zoratha's sterile order. That glow within her flared into something fiercer, a fire she could almost feel licking at her core. Their conversation was cut short by a distant rumble. The ground trembled, and Kale sprang up, scanning the trees. That's no storm, he muttered. Shadows moved in the distance, more Zorathian renegades, their ships hovering low, cloaked in faint distortions. Vera's pulse quickened as she recognized their markings, the same faction that had attacked before, now bolder, more determined. They've come to finish it, she said, standing. We can't outrun them. Then we fight, Kale replied, already grabbing his toolkit. Same as last time, smart, not just hard. The renegades descended swiftly, 6 of them this time, armed with energy rifles and blades. Their leader, a scarred warrior named Thrice, stepped forward, his voice cold. Your mission ends here, Vera. Humans are a disease, we'll purge them, starting with him. Kale didn't flinch, gripping a metal pipe he'd salvaged. Try it, he spat. The battle erupted in a blur. Vera fired pulses from her wrist device, stunning 2 attackers, but the others closed in fast. Kale swung his pipe, cracking one across the skull, then ducked a blade aimed at his throat. They were outnumbered, and the renegade's precision was relentless. Vera took a hit to her shoulder, a searing pain that made her stagger. Logic screamed at her to retreat, to save herself, but Kale's voice cut through the chaos. Vera, stay with me, he shouted, pulling her behind a tree. His eyes burned with that same stubborn fire she'd seen before. We're not done yet. She nodded, gritting her teeth against the pain. Kale ripped a wire from his scanner and rigged it to a fallen rifle, turning it into a makeshift bomb. Get them close, he said, handing it to her. She understood instantly, hurling it into the group. The explosion sent 3 renegades sprawling, giving them a fleeting advantage. But Thrice remained, his blade gleaming as he advanced. Vera faced him, her training kicking in, but something else surged too, a raw, burning will she'd never felt before. She didn't just want to survive, she wanted to protect Kale, to prove something to herself. She dodged Thrice's strike, then slammed her fist into his chest, a move fueled not by logic but by that fire within. He stumbled, shocked, and Kale finished him with a blow to the head. The clearing fell silent, the renegades defeated, their ships retreating into the sky. Vera sank to her knees, her breath ragged. Kale dropped beside her, his hand on her uninjured shoulder. You okay? He asked, his voice rough with concern. She nodded, meeting his gaze. I fought, differently, she said, her voice trembling. Not just with skill, but with, something more. I felt it, Kale, your spirit. It's real. He smiled, tired but warm. Told you it's not a myth. And you've got it too, now. Vera's chest tightened, that fire still burning within her. She'd tapped into it, let it guide her, and it had saved them. For the first time, she saw her mission in a new light, not as a quest to disprove, but to understand. Kale's stories, his unshakable will, had ignited something in her, a piece of humanity she couldn't deny. As they patched each other up, the ship's hum grew stronger, nearly restored. But Vera knew the danger wasn't over. The saboteurs would return, and her people's fear of humans would only grow. Yet with Kale beside her, she felt a strange certainty, a belief that together, they could face anything. The fire within her wasn't just a spark anymore, it was a flame, hungry and alive, and she wasn't sure she could ever extinguish it. The forest stretched endlessly around Vera and Kale, its shadows deepening as night fell. The air was cool, tinged with the earthy scent of moss and the faint hum of the nearly repaired ship. Vera sat cross-legged beside it, her golden eyes reflecting the flickering light of a small fire Kale had built. Her shoulder ached from the earlier fight, but the pain was distant now, overshadowed by the fire burning in her chest, a fierce, unshakable force she'd come to recognize as the human spirit. Kale worked nearby, his hand steady as he connected the final circuits, his sandy hair glowing faintly in the firelight. They were close to finishing, but the weight of what lay ahead pressed heavily on them both. The sabotaged ship, the renegade attacks, it all pointed to a truth Vera could no longer ignore. Her people, or at least a faction of them, saw humans as a threat, a wild force that defied their orderly galaxy. She'd been sent to Earth to disprove their strength, but instead, she'd found it, felt it, lived it. And now, with Kale by her side, she knew the final test was coming. The renegades wouldn't stop, they'd return with greater numbers, determined to erase her and the human who'd awakened her. Kale glanced over, wiping sweat from his brow. Almost there, he said, his voice steady despite the exhaustion in his eyes. Once this core's online, you'll be flying again. Ready to go home? Vera didn't answer right away. Home, Zoratha's crystalline towers, its cold perfection, felt like a distant memory. She'd always belonged there, a queen among her kind, but now the thought of returning left her hollow. I don't know, she admitted, her voice soft. This planet, your ways, they've changed me, Kale. I'm not sure I fit there anymore. He paused, setting his tools down. Changed how? She met his gaze, her glass-like skin shimmering faintly. I feel alive here. Not just existing, but burning. Your spirit, it's inside me now. I fought with it, defied logic with it. On Zorith, that's weakness. Here, it's everything. Kale smiled, a quiet pride in his expression. Sounds like you're more human than you think. That fire? It's not just ours. You've made it yours too. His words settled over her, warm and true. She wanted to say more, to explore the tangle of emotions swirling within her, but a low rumble interrupted them. The ground trembled, and the fire flared as a gust of wind swept through the clearing. Kale was on his feet in an instant, his hand gripping the metal pipe he'd used as a weapon. Vera stood beside him, her senses sharpening. She knew that sound, Zorathian ships, more than before, their engines vibrating through the air. They're here, she said, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her. The saboteurs. They won't stop until I'm gone, or until they've destroyed you. Kale's jaw tightened. Then we make sure they regret it. Ship's not ready to fly, but we've got something better, us. The sky darkened as 3 sleek ships descended, their hulls glinting like shards of ice. Dozens of renegades poured out, led by a towering figure in black armor, Cryon, a high-ranking traitor Vera recognized from her council. His eyes burned with hatred as he approached, his voice a low growl. You've betrayed us, Vera. Allied with this filth. Zorith will be cleansed of your weakness. I'm no traitor, she shot back, stepping forward. You fear what you don't understand. Humans aren't weak, they're stronger than you'll ever know. Cryon sneered, raising a massive energy cannon. We'll see. He fired, and the blast tore through the clearing, shattering trees. Vera dove aside, pulling Kale with her. The battle erupted in a storm of light and sound, renegades charging, weapons blazing, the forest trembling under the chaos. Kale moved fast, grabbing scraps from their repair work, wires, a busted panel, a power cell. We can't outgun them, he shouted over the noise, but we can outsmart them. Help me rig this. Vera nodded, her mind racing. She'd fought with precision before, but now she let that fire guide her, blending her knowledge with Kale's ingenuity. Together, they built a trap, a web of electrified wires linked to the ship's remaining power, stretched across the clearing. Kale baited the renegades, darting through the trees, taunting them. Come on, you shiny cowards. Catch me if you can. They took the bait, charging after him, their focus narrowing. Vera activated the trap, and a surge of electricity arced through the wires, dropping half the attackers in a sizzling heap. Cryon roared, redirecting his cannon, but Vera was ready. She fired her wrist device, a concentrated pulse that jammed his weapon's circuits. He cursed, tossing it aside and drawing a blade instead. Kale circled back, joining her. Nice shot. Now what? We end this, she said, her voice fierce. The fire within her blazed, no longer a flicker but a wildfire, driving her forward. She faced Cryon, dodging his strikes with a grace born of training and a ferocity born of something new. Kale flanked him, swinging his pipe, forcing the traitor to split his attention. Together, they were relentless, Vera's precision meeting Kale's raw determination in a dance of survival. Cryon lunged, his blade grazing Vera's arm, but she didn't falter. She grabbed his wrist, twisting it with a strength she hadn't known she possessed, fueled by that human fire. Kale slammed his pipe into Cryon's knee, bringing him down. Vera pinned him, her voice cold but triumphant. Your fear blinds you. This is what you'll never understand. The remaining renegades hesitated, their leader defeated. Kale rigged one last trick, a flare from the ship's exhaust, blinding them long enough for Vera to signal her wrist device. A distress beacon flared to life, summoning Zorathian loyalists who'd been tracking her. Within moments, Allied ships arrived, apprehending the traitors and securing the clearing. As the dust settled, Vera and Kale stood amid the wreckage, breathing hard. The ship hummed fully now, its core restored, ready to fly. But Vera didn't move toward it. She turned to Kale, her golden eyes bright with something unshakable: resolve, gratitude, connection. "You could go back," Kale said, his voice quiet. "Tell them what happened. Change things." She shook her head. "I don't belong there anymore. This fire, I can't extinguish it. I want to stay, Kale. To learn, to build, to be part of this." She paused, her hand brushing his. "With you." He smiled, a warmth in his green eyes. "Guess we've got a lot to figure out then. Welcome to Earth, Queen." The loyalists approached, offering her a choice: return to Zorith as a hero or face exile for defying tradition. She chose exile without hesitation, stepping away from her past and into the unknown. The forest stretched out around them, vast and alive, a new beginning unfolding. Vera felt the flame within her settle, not fading but growing, a steady light that promised more than she'd ever imagined. Days later, they stood atop a hill overlooking a human settlement, the ship repurposed as a beacon for cooperation between their kinds. Vera's people would resist, but she didn't care. She'd seen the truth: human spirit wasn't a myth, it was a force that could awaken anyone, even a queen from a cold, distant world. With Kale beside her, she felt alive in ways Zorith could never offer, her heart burning with a fire that would never die. The stars above twinkled, a silent witness to their alliance. Vera knew challenges would come, doubts from her kind, struggles on Earth, but together, they'd face them. The flame unleashed within her wasn't just survival, it was creation, curiosity, and a bond that defied the galaxy's rules. And as Kale's hand found hers, she smiled, ready for whatever lay ahead.